Good morning everyone, Pierre speaking. It's the 28th of March 2017. Time is about 8:50 GMT time when we made this video clip, starting off with the Euro US dollar 4-hour chart. If we look at the direction indicator, the 4-hour tells us too long, the daily tells us too long. Last week we had a nice move, we closed 102 pips higher than the opening. This week we also opened with a gap. Look at that. Now that gap didn't fill yet, and as Mark always tells us, 90% of the time gaps do get filled, so there's a possibility that the gap will fill, and if the gap fill, that means price will come all the way down into our trading zone, gap will fill, and we will be at this 200 EMA. Trading zone for the week, we need to flip previous week from the bottom to the current high of this week. Then we've got a zone starting at 816 coming down to 769. In the trading zone, we've got a weekly main pivot point, a 200 EMA, a psychological level. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance there as well. If that breaks, then the last line in the sand will be at 781, where we have a 4-hour 55 EMA. So that will be the area to go long. Possible counter trades, we're already burnt at the psychological level of 900 at a weekly pivot point. Price is busy turning around, currently in no man's land. So that will be a roadblock area for possible counter shorts if we do get up there again. Otherwise, look for possible longs in that Earth Sky trading zone. Euro JPY, this one is a little bit mixed. The daily tells us it's been mixed. 4-hour tells us that we need to look for shorts. Last week we closed 114 pips lower than the opening. So what I will do is I'll flip the 4-hour while we stay under this 200 EMA at 120.76. We will flip previous week from the high to the low to get the trading zone. Zone will start at 120.59 going up to 121.22. In the zone we've got a daily 55 and a 200 EMA, and if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So that will be my area in the zone to short. Before we get to the zone, we have a 55 EMA weekly main pivot point, and we can see we already had trouble at the 54 EMA. So keep your eyes also at the 38.2 FIB starting at 120.29 going up to 120.51 for possible roadblock area 2. Possible counter trades, I will only look once we get to 118.87. Euro pound daily chart, I will look at the daily chart. We're mixing the 4-hour. Daily tells us too long. Last week we closed minus 8 pips lower, so we can't flip the 4-hour. If we flip the daily, then it will be on the daily chart. Previous month, from the low to the high of this month, then we've got a zone starting at 8595, coming down to 8499. In the trading zone, we've got a monthly main pivot point, a 200 EMA, and previous support resistance. That will be areas to keep an eye on. 8547, 8528, 8514. Saying that at the 38.2 FIB, 8640 is key. We have a 200 EMA there and a 55 EMA, and we can already see that price had a problem there. We also opened with a little gap there. Let's go to the 4-hour chart. Look at that. We opened with the gap, and the gap already filled there. Back to the daily. While this 55 EMA holds at 86.90, my bias will be too long from there. If it breaks, I will sit on my hands as price can tumble down. I'm going to go and visit this mother-in-law at 85.13, where I will relook to go long again. If you look at the pound US dollar 4-hour chart, here the daily tells us the short, the 4-hour tells us the long. Last week we closed 152 pips higher than the opening. I will look for possible long areas while this 200 EMA holds at 2379. That holds hands with the 4-hour telling us that we need to look for longs. We will flip previous week from the bottom to the top of this week. Then we've got a zone 2475 coming down to 2405. In a zone we've got a weekly pivot point, 55 EMA, and these EMAs will move to the upside. We've got also previous support resistance in the zone. Now, that will be my areas, 2416, 2446, and if that breaks, definitely the 55 EMA here and the 200 EMA that later in the week will move into the trading zone. So keep your eyes on them as well if the 2446 55 EMA breaks. Currently, we're expecting a pullback. Why? Because we've got MACD divergence. Prices trending up, MACD's trending down, stochastic is overbought, and we already burned fingers at 2586, 2616. So that will be the obvious areas to look for possible counter trades on this one. Pound JPY 4-hour chart. I'm going to flip the 4-hour, guys. The 4-hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. Last week we closed 118 pips lower than the opening. Over the last couple of weeks we flipped the daily chart, and remember that 139.92 was a key level. Price bounced plenty of times from that level. If we flip the 4-hour from the high to the low, then we've got a zone starting at 139.08 going up to 139.75. If currently price is stumbling here at 139.13, so that will be the area. Look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. I will look for possible shorts from there, 139.13. If we break to the upside, I will sit on my hands, guys, because then we will go back to 139.92, where we have a 200 EMA, psychological level, 55 EMA, previous support resistance, and as I showed you plenty of times, we burnt there. So I will take a chance here, but I need solid confirmation. If I don't get it, we break to the upside, then that will be the line in the sand, 139.92. Aussie US dollar, sitting on my hands with this one. Current daily candle is busy breaking all these EMAs. It's a 55 4-hour, the daily 55 EMA. We're busy breaking to the downside. Now, two things can happen. Price can break to the other side, close there, look for possible pullback on the smaller time frames, back to the 55 and the 200 EMA, followed by an M2 short setup on this one. Otherwise, if price keep on tumbling down, I will keep my eyes on 7542, as this is a daily 200 EMA plus a monthly pivot point for solid support for possible longs, then going back to all these EMAs as profit take areas. Aussie JPY 4-hour chart. Last week in the webinar, Judith and I spoke about this one. Price tumbled, and I warned that, I think we were in this area here, I warned that we will be going to visit the mother-in-law at 83.82, and that is exactly what's busy happening. The 4-hour tells us to short, daily tells us to long. Last week we closed 244 pips lower. Okay, so if we flip the 4-hour to get a trading zone to short, because we've got a hell of a lot of EMAs to the upside that can give that resistance, then we will flip 4-hour from the high to the current lows to get a zone starting at 85.57 going up to 86.40. In the zone, we've got a daily 55 and a 200 EMA plus a psychological level. So that will be my areas in the zone. Before the zone, starting at 85.17, going up to 85.43, we have the 38.2 weekly main pivot point and the 55 EMA that's coming down. So that can be a roadblock area this week for possible shorts. Going with the trend on the daily, I will keep my eyes on 83.82, as this is a daily 200 EMA psychological level. Price already burned there, and what can you guys spot on this chart? We have MACD divergence. So that's a warning sign that there's correction coming on this one. US dollar JPY 4-hour chart. Everything here shouts that we need to short 4-hour and the daily. We closed 213 pips lower than the opening. So if we flip previous week, then from the high to the low of this week, then we've got a zone starting at 111.55, going up to 112.26. In the zone, we've got a 55 EMA psychological level and a pivot point. So that will be my areas, 111.84, 112, 112.21. Just before we get to the zone, there's a roadblock area at the 38.2 FIP at 11122. We have a weekly pivot point, and there's a 200 EMA camping out there. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So that can be the roadblock area for us this week for that short. If that breaks to the upside, I will keep my eyes on that 55 EMA. Possible counter trade, I will only look at 109.70. US dollar CAT. Now the US dollar CAT bounced off this area here, 3312. And why was that an important level? If we go to the daily chart, we can see 4 hours mixed. Daily tells us to long. Last week we closed minus 6 pips lower than the opening, so we couldn't flip the 4 hour. We stick on the daily from previous week from the low to the high. Our zone started at 3,258, coming down to 3,120. In the zone, we have a 200 EMA, a monthly pivot point, psychological level, and always look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So that will be the areas in my trading zone. Before the zone, this is a big support level here, 3296, 3312. We have a 55 EMA there, psychological level there, a 4 hour 200 EMA, and a 54 EMA. And look how price already found support there loads of times. Now we're busy going up here, and this will be a possible profit taking if you're in the long. 3426. Why? Because it's a monthly pivot point. Look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance there as well. And if we go to the 4 hour chart, look at that. There's a weekly pivot point, and that was last week's high area. So if you're still in the long, keep your eyes on 3404, possible roadblock for that long that you're in. So what can we do for counter trades? Keep your eyes on 3426 for that counter trades back down to the 55 EMA and the 200 EMA in the zone here. If we break to the upside, 3426 for some reason, go to the 4 hour chart and keep your eyes on this level here, 3479 to the psychological level of 3500. US dollar index 4 hour chart, this one is stumbling. Last week we closed 98 pips lower than the opening. Everything here tells us to look for short. If we broke that 200 EMA, here we also opened with a gap. The gap didn't fill yet. So what do we need to do? We flipped previous week from the high to the low. We've got a zone 99.66 going up to 100.07. Okay, in the zone we've got a 55 EMA, the 54 EMA, weekly pivot point, psychological level, and a weekly resistance pivot point. Look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So I will look at 100.09, 100, 99.95, 99.68 in the zone. Just before the zone at the 38.2 FIP, 99.46, we have a 200 daily EMA there. Look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance there as well. So that can be a roadblock area. What did price do? We touched this week already the weekly pivot point here at 99, what's that level? 98.84 already. Burned there. Look at that spinning top there at the psychological. Price is busy turned up, and we're on our way to that first profit take at 99.46. Well guys, that's that. If you've got any questions, please pop in at the forum. I will be able to help you there. Just before I want to go, I think I didn't mention this. Here we also opened with a gap, US dollar CAT. See how the gap closed already? US dollar JPY also opened with a gap. This gap is not closed yet. And where was the other one? Euro JPY, no, Euro US dollar. Gap still open. So there's still a couple of them that where we have gaps that didn't fall. If you don't know how to trade gaps, please pop into the education tab. Look for Mark's method how to trade gaps. Have an awesome one. Speak to you later. Cheers.